Good. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. This is going to be a really wise use of time today if you're listening in, because we're going to be talking about the power of rest and why doing less brings greater results. Who wants more rest, right? And yet, as business owners who are called and committed and driven with lots to do, sometimes it just feels like that's not possible. And so that is why I've invited my friend Gina to join us today, because this is where she really shines. And I know some of it comes out of your own story, so we'll get there. But yeah, first of all, Gina, thank you for being here today. Tell us a little bit about you outside of your work, like who and what is getting your time in this season of life.
Yeah. Well, first off, Lissa, I just want to say I'm just honored for this conversation today and just helping offer a kingdom lens on how rest isn't just a pause, but a powerful, life-giving rhythm that really renews our energy and multiplies our impact. And I listened to your episodes 311 and 316 and just that reminder of how much time that we lose. It was like when I added those two things together from those episodes, it was like we lose nearly 20 hours or more a week from randomness and lack of systems and rewriting to-do lists. So,
And we wonder
yeah,
why we're tired,
yeah, and we
right?
wonder why. Yeah, and then we're thinking about them on top of that and how much time we lose from that. So, yeah, I'm in a really beautiful season right now. I'm raising a 6-year-old. We actually just got off of a week of RSV that was really,
Ah,
really awful last week. Just watching him, suffer with fevers and things. So I'm kind of playing catch up from that week, but just building my coaching and retreat business and cheering my husband on. He's also an entrepreneur who builds completely custom camper vans. So we're an entrepreneurial family, which I think I'm the first in my family, and I believe he's the first in his too. So that's really fun. And yeah, I'm just really excited for just this new season. I mean, I'll get into it a little bit later, but God's really brought me through this journey, and rest was the first piece of that. So that's where I really got excited about it, and I really saw the mountain moving potential of intentionally resting with the Lord. And so it just gets me so excited. I'm still not perfect at it. I'm sure, we trip over ourselves quite a bit and try to do things in our own power, but the more and more that I practice this and I keep it in the forefront, it really gives your business and your life so much joy and satisfaction and fulfillment. So I'm just really, really excited for all that. And I know our hearts are really aligned
yes.
with.
Oh, I love this. In fact, I was just having this conversation in my book club this morning that God promises rest to his people. And yet, so many of us are running around saying, I'm busy, life is busy, oh, just staying
Yep.
busy, like it's this badge of honor. And yet, if we're really doing it with him and from him, yes, we may be doing things and we will feel like the physical, exhaustion, or we feel the physical, response to I've been working, but we're not going to be in that exhausted place if we're coming from that. So, yeah, let's get into that. I want to hear more about how you're called to serve others through your business around this area of rest. So often we're working for our rest, right? Like it's like I just want to get through Monday through Friday to get to the weekend so I can rest. But really, this concept of like working from rest and really putting that front and center versus it being the carrot we dangle out there, but sometimes don't
Mhm.
get to. So tell us a little bit more about kind of what your work looks like, and then take us on that journey. I want to hear how you've really learned to follow Jesus' example of rest and how that's changed not only you personally, but also the work you do.
Yeah, I help Christian women, entrepreneurs, and business owners really reclaim their authority over their time and their energy. I'm seeing so much exhaustion when we think about what the pandemic, did for us and to us without our consent, really, right? Like our whole lives were upturned. But I mean, the blessing in that was we were starting to see that we were going at a pace that was unsustainable.
Right.
And I feel for a lot of women, especially, all of a sudden they got all this time back and they didn't know what to do with themselves, right? And so by like year 3, when we were starting to kind of move out of the pandemic, we were seeing more joy, more relationships rebuilt, more fun and play with our families and with people that are close to us that we wanted relationship with. And then fast forward now a couple more years after the pandemic, and we're all back to that same grind. We're
It's
all
like we
back to that
forgot.
pace. Yeah, we forgot. And the world is like screaming in our face, and God is sitting there with us, like, but I need you to look to me. I need you to sit with me and build that relationship with me so that you're not constantly moving with the wind and the waves, right? We're on that steady, grounded, straight path that he promises. And rest it isn't a suggestion. It's a command.
It is a
I mean,
command. Wow.
in Genesis 2, God created the entire world, the universe, everything, and then what did he do on the seventh day? He rested.
Yeah. Yeah. And what
So
I
why?
love is that it was actually day one for Adam and Eve. And it wasn't
Yes.
like, again, they had to work Monday through Friday to get their day of rest. Their first day on the job was resting and just being with God. What a great
Yeah.
example.
I know. And God rested. And then you're like, well, why? Why, Lord? Like,
Mm.
why would the creator of all the universe rest? And then if you kind of look into some of the commentaries and things in that verse, God was like rejoicing and being fulfilled by all of the work and the creation that he had done.
Mm.
And so he was actually being rejuvenated by it.
Yeah.
And so he knew we would also be bad at it, right? So he was setting the very first example of like, okay, if I'm resting and you need to rest as my children. So,
Yeah. I
um,
often look to Jesus too,
mhm,
who, like he had a very full life. I mean, we don't know a whole lot before the last 3 years, but it wasn't like he was sitting around doing nothing. And yet he very often would intentionally choose to get away by himself, to get away with his disciples, to get away with his inner circle, to rest.
mhm.
Right. And then when it was time, he knew when it was time to then go and do what was next in his mission to do. So tell me a little bit about how his example of rest and intentional work has really shaped you and then the work that you do.
Yeah, oh man, Jesus. I mean, just the first thing that comes to my mind is even when Lazarus died. I
Mm.
mean, it took him what, 2 or 3 days to
Yeah.
go? Like he didn't drop everything and go
Right.
right away. And I just think about that in our business and like how much we're dropping everything, putting out fires, and we're going so fast that we miss the most important pieces. We miss the most important appointments that God has set before us because we can't even see straight. I mean, the world is going by at Mach speed and we're just along for the ride, right? We're
Mm.
just going with it. Um, and so that's what I really love about what Jesus' example set and being fully present where God has placed you in the season and the time and with the people that he's placed you with.
Mm.
And he was never rushed, he was never hurried. He always had time for the one, right? The woman
Right.
who was bleeding, who like he's in this humongous crowd and he turns around and sees this hurting woman and notices her when all these other people are screaming at him for his attention and he fully was present for that woman. And it's just a beautiful reminder of what we miss relationally when we're so stuck in the business and in the tasks and in the to-do lists
Mm.
versus reminding ourselves like with like about the people, like it's
Yeah.
about the people, it's about the relationship. So how can we get back to that? Because if you can build the foundation of your business from rest and relationship and God, you're going to have a really successful business.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit more because all of us struggle with rest. Let's be honest. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just something that everyone does. And I was actually, I can't remember if it was on a podcast or something I was listening to recently was talking about the fact that it's not just, happening at this season of life, where we're in mom mode and whatever. Like it's starting in college, it's starting in, like teenage years and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just this pace is picking up. So why is rest such a struggle? especially for us as Christian women business owners. I mean, I think about like we are juggling so many things.
Hmm.
And so it feels like, I don't know, you can dive into it. Like it
Yeah.
feels like there's not time. It feels like there's too many things to do. It
Yes.
feels like there's too many people to serve. It feels like, it's a luxury. I mean, there's so many things we
I
tell
know.
ourselves. So why is this such a struggle for us, but also a need, something we need to address as Christian women business owners?
Well, we often carry way more, right, than just a full schedule.
Mm,
It's not I like to say it's kind of like a spider web. So like when I'm coaching women, everything's connected to everything else. So you touch the spider web, right, and it reverberates
mm,
like to every other piece in your life. So I think that's what's the beautiful thing about women, but it's also the most challenging thing for us is we're emotionally tied and emotionally connected to everything, right? We're our business is our baby, our kids are our babies. Like we just have so much passion and love and just this nurturing nature, right? To be the helper. I mean, that's what God created us to be, is to be a helper. And so we just have this desire to help and do everything. And so there's this really deep expectation I think we place on ourselves, right, to be everything for everyone.
mm,
And I've heard a lot of women say, well, I want to be Wonder Woman. I want to be I want to do everything. I want to do it all. However, if we were to really break that down, it's not healthy. We're not called to be everything. God is everything.
right. Yeah.
And so, in a sense, it's kind of that pride of, well, yeah, I want to be everything. I want to do it all. But God is the one that we need to rely on to do all those things and to stay in our lane. And when we can stay in our lane, right, it glorifies Him. It glorifies all the giftings He's given us. And it sets the stage, right, for all those people that are looking at us and relying on us. And so, um, just this worldly view of glorifying hustle and
Mm,
multitasking and 24/7 availability and
yes.
um, even in ministry and purpose-driven business, it's easy for us to fall into the traps of the lie of busyness equals importance, right?
Yes.
Or if I stop, everything's gonna fall apart, right? Or
Like it all
like
depends on us, right? Yeah.
yeah. Other things I've heard, and I mean, I've struggled with this stuff too, is the enemy loves this playground. It's like
Mm.
if the enemy can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. I'm sure you've heard that before, right?
Oh,
And
totally.
it's not it hasn't felt more true until like these recent years where I've had the awareness of it. And like he'll say things to you like, you don't deserve rest until the work is done, right? You're
Mm,
lazy if you slow down. You're falling behind. No one else is going to do it, so you have to, right? But the truth is the enemy hates rest.
mm,
Rest is a weapon. It is a holy weapon because when we pause and we rest in God, we declare with our time and our energy, Lord, I trust you more than I trust myself. I
yes.
trust you more than I trust my circumstances. And so you are putting a stake in the ground and you're waging war against the enemy's pressure by planting our peace in God's promises, provisions, and pace.
Mm. So we'll say those three P's again. His promises
His promises, his provisions, and his
and his
pace.
pace. Wow. Yeah, I love that. Rest is a holy weapon because you're right. I think one of the enemy's number one tactics is to keep us busy and distracted
Hmm.
because then we're of no threat to him, right? We're just tasting our own tail. And we're of no use to the kingdom. And eventually he knows we're going to be burnout, right? Which is why
Hmm.
Jesus said, come to me, all you who are stressed out, worn out, burned out is the way the message translates, that invitation in Matthew. And yeah, that is that holy invitation. But of course, the enemy would love to step in and be like, but no, the work is
Yeah.
done. People need you. Oh, it's just one more thing. I mean, how about that lie, right? They're like, it's just
Hmm.
one more thing. It's just something small. It's not a big deal. So, what are some of the first signs that someone might need to realign their work and life with God's rhythms, that they're kind of getting away from rest and needing to come back there or get there if they haven't been there?
Yeah, I mean, you hear the phrase, right? Like we don't need to work harder, we need to work smarter, but I want to add something to that because I feel like we need to trust deeper. We need to trust
Mm,
him more. It's all about this, how much do you trust in God's promises, right? And his peace, and that he is there with you. And so some of these signs, like recognizing the signs of if you are needing rest or on the verge, would be like feeling anxious all the time,
Mm.
right? Overwhelmed. This is a funny thing I think I shared on another podcast. Like I have this thing where you'll be cleaning the house all day, right? Like nonstop, 4, 6 hours, 8 hours maybe. And then you're doing that all day and your husband's at work. And then he comes home and like you've just sat down and turned the TV on. And then as he walks in the house, I like turn the TV off quick and then I start doing something because I feel like I'm going to get in trouble if
Sure.
I'm not
I have to be
constantly.
producing something or checking a
Yes.
box or yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big red flag right there is
Yeah.
like if you don't feel like you deserve rest or time, that you constantly have to be on all the time. And it's like the Holy Spirit like wagging a flag, right? Of like, hey, I need you to just calm down and sit with me and recharge and refuel.
Mm.
Um, and so I would say that's probably one of the bigger steps, like scatteredness, right? You're constantly scattered all the time. You have brain fog. You've stopped exercising. Maybe you've stopped, having coffees with friends because you have, so much on your plate. And also the inability to say no. Like, no is a complete
Yeah,
sentence.
exactly.
And setting boundaries and making like a non-negotiables list of like, okay, in this season of life, this is realistically what I have the capacity for and the time for, and
Mm.
like sticking to it, like sticking to your guns and not being rude about it. We can
Sure.
we can invite people in a very loving and kind way and just say, hey, the season of my life is just looking a little different than it did, a few months ago. So yeah, so just inviting them into the.
Yeah. And it's okay if it's for a season, but it's not okay if it's ongoing. But yeah, I
Yes.
think that's where we go. But even if we tell ourselves this is just for a season, let's be honest, there's something else on the other side of that season. We think when I get done with this big project, when I
Yeah.
get done with this big event, when I get done
Mhm.
with this, like whatever it is, right? Like then I'll have time. And I think sometimes that's us, lying to ourselves, because we do need to take the time even in the midst of the busy season. It just may look different. So, what does it cost us in time, in, our own walk with the Lord or relationships with others or even our business results if we don't pause, push this pause button and rest?
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen in my own journey is it cost me relationships.
Mm.
It cost me, I mean, quite frankly, just my peace and my sanity.
Yeah.
Um, it cost me time with the Lord,
Hmm.
because everything, you feel like everything else is right here, right? Like I said before, screaming at you, the world, everything just seems more vivid in that sense, right? And this idea of like faith, like walking in our faith, and what does that mean? So, I think that it does cost a lot of women, especially CEOs, and business owners who are moms and wives and doing ministry, right? Is our connection with the Lord starts to falter because all those
Yeah.
other things that are good things are taking up all of the time and the space. And then we sit back and we're like, well, God, how come you're not talking to me? And he's like, I never left. I'm
Right.
right here, but
Yeah.
but you're not entering into the relationship with me, right? Relationships take time. They take
Mm.
time together. And so that has suffered as a result. I have struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life, so that is a constant battle that I wage war on daily. And so if I don't exercise, right, like everything else again becomes more important than my health and exercising, and then the anxiety gets worse or the depression gets worse, right? And so I think it is somewhat unique to the individual. But I also feel like there are a lot of similarities of like, oh, I'm normally an extroverted person, but now all I want to do is sit in the house and be in my PJs, right? Because
Wow.
that's more comfortable. Our brain is always going to pick the more comfortable thing than the harder thing of like, okay, I got a meeting today and it is not on the computer, which I was excited about until now I have to think about now I got to shower, now I got to put real clothes on, now I got to drive my car, now I got to go to this place, and instead of it taking an hour, now it's taking 3 hours out of my day. So yeah,
Yeah.
so they're yeah, sitting down and really taking inventory, right, of what it's costing you to not rest, right? And creativity. I mean,
Mm,
a lot of business owners are just jumping from thing to thing to thing, and they don't have the space or the capacity because they're multitasking, right?
right. Yeah.
For that creative, fun work of, creating content or, having fun brainstorming sessions, right? Without the nagging of all these
What you
worldly
should be doing.
things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And just to speak to, a place that I, have been in my life sometimes and can sometimes, go back there is like Liz is in the room, but she's not really in the room. It's
Yes.
like could be, it's not that I'm not putting off my time with the Lord or putting off my time with family. I am in the room and I've got the thing in front of me, the person in front of me, my Bible in front of me, my whatever it is, but it's like my mind is somewhere else. And it's like
Hmm.
that like
Yeah.
not able to be fully present because I'm not able to turn off all the doing and what's coming next and and all of that, which is really a struggle, especially when you feel very called to the work you do, whether in your business or in ministry or just in your family and things like that. There's always something that you could be doing, and so it's really hard to sometimes be fully present in that place. So this is not where we want to stay, right?
No, we don't want to
And
stay.
yet, sometimes we sometimes, and I know we've heard this, and sometimes we're like, oh yeah, I don't think that, but I think sometimes we do. We think rest is selfish, right? So
Mhm.
how do we see rest not as selfish, but as sacred and actually essential? Like how can it be the selfless thing we do? Because it allows us to show up fully present and to have, like you said, the energy and the creativity and whatever to do these things that we're called to. So walk us through maybe a couple practical steps of how we can start changing that.
Yeah. Well, first off, our bodies are God's temple. Is the
Mm.
temple of the Holy Spirit. And I think we forget about that. And so, how would you care for something that God owns? How would you steward that well? And so, taking care of our bodies and our minds and making sure that we are in a good, healthy place to serve out of and to do good works out of, right? I say God is a God of the and. It's not one or the other. It's not more this and more that. It is equally faith and works. It's equally justice and mercy. It's equally truth and love, right? But in our humanness, we tend to sway to one side or the other based upon some of our, our traumas and our vows and strategies and things over the years. But building in rest, I think as ambitious, driven, high achievers, I go to all or nothing, right?
Mm.
So I have to do an hour with the Lord in the morning out of like, okay, maybe I'm doing it sporadically, right? Okay, an hour. I'm going to wake up an hour earlier and I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden, you're like exhausted when you wake up because your kid was up all night. And then you blow through that hour and then you kind of give up, right?
Mm.
Well, I guess there goes that idea. And so I think overdoing it, right, on the expectation piece of, okay, this needs to be a full hour every day and this needs to be a full, 3 hours every day. Yes, you can get there. And the more you can do that, the better, right? Time with the Lord and also being realistic with the season you're in. So maybe it's just, hey, instead of taking an hour lunch today, I'm going to do 15 minutes and I'm going to read the Bible with the Lord. Or I'm going to take 15 minutes and instead of watching TV on my break, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to do a prayer walk and I'm just going to talk to the Lord and I'm going to see what he has for me. And so it's kind of integrating just these small bite-sized pieces of rest to help you recharge.
Yeah.
Um, I think I read in a book somewhere, I can't remember the book because it was a while ago, where it says we can only really focus in 90-minute chunks. So
Mm.
after each 90 minutes, we need at least a 20-minute break. And so you'll start to see as you start to implement these tiny little rest breaks, intentional rest breaks, that you'll get to the end of the day and you're not going to feel as exhausted or tired or worn out. You're going to feel more joy and more fulfillment and more peace because you were taking care of yourself along the way. But it doesn't have to be like this big, grandiose, like, yeah, I'm going to go leave my family for 3 days.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
if you
This
can do that, that's great for Sabbath. but like, where can you start?
Sure. I love that. I did hear once, and this probably ties into this, that when you do get out of that 90-minute block, there are three things you should do. Number one, hydrate. Number two, move your body. And number three, get outside or at least look in the distance. Because even when I just look out my window here, and it's like because I'm focused on a screen that's so far in front of me for that 90-minute
Mhm.
time, most of it. And so when I look out here and there's depth and there's trees and there's green and there's all these things, it like helps reset your brain.
Yes.
It's interesting how just something so small can make such a difference instead of traditional Lissa, let's just push through. Just what's the
Yep.
next thing? Check the next box. Like, let's go. And I've
Yep.
sometimes found, like, or even earlier today, my husband came home early from work, and here I am, closing my eyes, with the blanket up over my head because I was like, I just need like 10 minutes. This is a better use of my time to just rest for a few minutes before, stepping into the next thing, than pushing through and, yeah, being exhausted by the end of it. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons too. I like how you talked about like, it's instead of some of these things that we typically do. I mean, sometimes we think I'm just going to veg, right? Which usually means scrolling or watching TV. We
Hmm.
think that's restful. And one of the things that I teach when we talk about refills is like, what's truly refilling you in body, mind, spirit? And I
Hmm.
find a lot of women, like they will have that morning time. And so they do build that into the routine, but it's the evening time. It's the I'm working up until bedtime. It's the I'm not working, but I'm on my phone, or I'm watching something or whatever. And like, is that really refilling? Is that really like resetting your body, mind, spirit? Or is it just, again, kind of keeping things keyed up or making you feel like, you're not doing enough because you see what everybody else is doing or things like that. So,
Yeah, I
reminder.
mean, that's a super interesting point because um, our brain is, it's always on, right? And it's always filtering through information at like Mach speed. And when we are scrolling, our brain is working. So even
Mhm.
though our bodies may feel at rest, our brain is making micro decisions, right? Like you're like, oh, I like that, I don't like that, or
Yeah.
that looks pretty and this doesn't, and ugh, what is that? And so it's when you're scrolling, you're making all these mini decisions and you're exhausting your brain more. So
Hmm.
by plugging your phone in after work and setting it aside and giving your brain that time to rest, I can guarantee because I've done this for myself, I have noticed a huge difference just that night. But when I wake up in the morning, I'm not as tired.
Yeah. Yeah. We wonder why we can't fall asleep or stay asleep if our
Hmm.
brain has been working literally, up until the time we went to bed and then we're not rested. So,
Yep.
yeah, this is so important. So, I want to tie this, everything we talk about here, Redeemer time, comes back to our time because I think time is that underlying thing that really touches every different area of our life. So, how does being intentional about working from rest, being intentional about having these rest, spots built into our day, our week, our month, our season, our year, how does it affect our time overall and the return that we get on our time, the roadie, as we talked about it around two?
Yeah. Well, you get more time back because
Mhm.
now you have authority over your time again, and you're not just leaving it to whim and the enemy, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like you get the sense of you back.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, I mean, if you read in, like the neuroscience world, they call it your watt, your window of tolerance. And some people's windows are really small. Some people's are wider. And when we get bumped out of our window, which is the window is where we feel safe, we feel like ourselves, right? This is where you find clarity, where you find your confidence, where your creativity can come from, this peace and innovation, playfulness, joy. I mean, all of the good feelings that come from the Lord, right? The fruits of the Spirit come out of the window. But if you don't feel safe and if you don't feel like yourself, right, we get bumped out. So we either are depressed, right, and we are like sinking, like folding into ourselves and we're avoiding everybody, or we become numb and
Mm.
we're not really there or paying attention to anything, or we're in the fight, right, or flight mode, which is the hyper agitated state. So when we're outside our window, that's the enemy's playground,
Sure.
right? And so these restful practices are actually helping us get back in our window and they're also helping us expand our window,
Mm.
meaning that when you can expand your window, the more you can expand it, the more resilient you will be as a leader, as a business owner, as a CEO, as an individual. So you'll be able to endure hardship well, right? And Paul talks about that, right? As finding joy in all circumstances. He doesn't say for all circumstances, saying how can you find joy in the circumstance? And this is learning how to get in your window and expand your window so that you can have all of this peace and the fruit of the Spirit. And that comes with, right, our relationship with the Lord and starting to do some of these simple practices because God designed our brain that way. And so, sorry, I hope I answered your
No, I
question, but
totally did. No, and as I'm thinking, the word that's coming to my mind is spaciousness. Like, am I
hmm
creating space? As I'm thinking about your window, not only having the window, we don't want this tiny little window, but it's okay if you're starting with a
yes,
tiny window. And then
yes,
how do I allow that to expand? How do I create this space so that there is room to flex and flow and respond instead of react, and all of that. But when we don't create that space, then you're right. It's just like everything gets so tightly packed, like rush hour on the 405. And then we wonder when one thing bumps into the next, why it feels like life is
yeah,
crashing because we've literally left no margin. We literally have like stacked everything right on top of each other and are not leaving the window, are not leaving space for the window, right? And so I love this around here. So that woman who's listening today, who she's like, okay, Gina and Lissa, I'm busy. I am on the overwhelm. I'm on the anxious. I'm just going from one thing to the next. I'm not resting. I am starting to put off these things I used to say that matter to me, like you mentioned. What's one piece of encouragement that you would give her if she's in that place but really wants to start working towards rest and working from rest?
yeah, I would say she's not alone.
Mm,
Satan wants you to think you're alone, and you're not.
yeah.
Um, and the other piece of that is you can start from where you're at.
Mm,
Um, I think the biggest thing that I learned through this experience was how hard I was on myself. I didn't like feedback or criticism because I was harder on myself than the feedback or criticism, right?
yeah.
And so I think we'll start to get into the shame cycle of, oh, like you realize that is me, and now what's wrong with me? If I know I can do something about it, how come I'm not doing something about it, right? And it's because the thing on the other side of the procrastination feels big and scary and heavy. So, and that, I mean, that's normal. That's a normal feeling. It's a normal reaction, but it's not from God. So I would say start with where you're at, start with prayer, start with just sitting, even for 5 minutes,
Mm,
sitting
yeah.
with the Lord and asking him, like, where do I need to start?
Mm,
What is going to help me start to create this space for you and space for me to just breathe?
mm.
So I think that starts with prayer, and it also starts with finding, the on-time management strategist here,
Yeah, right.
Lissa, a coach or a counselor or somebody, a professional that can help you process and work through and move forward from that space.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's so good because we do want to do it all, even when it comes to rest. And we're like, if I can't do, then we feel like, what's the point? And yet you're right,
yes.
it starts small. And what happens is I think over time it has a cumulative effect because we see, okay, I am able to, follow through on this commitment in a small way, and I'm feeling the effects of it. And so now I want more of that. And then I think it leads towards maybe having those bigger, windows or blocks of time that we are actually resting. So yeah, I love this. Like find what's restful for you. And it's so interesting because rest is different for everyone. We read a book uh, with the CEOs last year that was talking about like if you work with your hands, then Sabbath with your mind. If you work with your mind, Sabbath with your hands. So it's
Yep.
interesting. Like somebody getting in their garden could be the most restful thing in the world, right? But for somebody else, they're like, that feels like work.
Yes.
I need, this kind of a thing. So I think you're right. It's like knowing what is life-giving for you in this season and just it's going to have to involve blocking that time first, which is why I
Yes.
teach we block our refills before we block our to-dos, because otherwise there isn't going to be time left over and then we're going to be overloaded, over capacity like you've talked about. So
Hmm.
I've taken a page and a half, a couple pages of notes
Yes.
here, so which is great. We could talk all day because this is
Uh-huh.
such an important topic. And this is, something that all of us, really need to be intentional about ongoing, especially as women who are running businesses and other things in our life and things like that. So, what resources do you have to support women? And I want to make sure you touch on a really big one you have coming up to get away and work on
Hmm.
rest and things like that as well. So, what would be a good next step for people? And then tell us a little bit about that bigger one that you're talking about right now.
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to gift your audience with my free download. It's called Find Your Peace in Just 8 Minutes a Day. It's a reset guide with simple practices, restful rhythms, I call them, to help you pause and breathe and reconnect with the Holy Spirit, even on your busiest days. Again, just that scheduling that 8 minutes in between, your sessions or in between calls or what have you, that's easy and simple to do and isn't going to take an hour, right? And then Lissa said she'll, leave that link in the show notes for you. So the other thing coming up that I'm very excited about is my Women Rise Up retreat coming up in Hurricane, Utah, July 30th through August 3rd. And that is a intentional safe space just to disconnect from all the noise and reconnect with God and his voice. And these 5-day experiences really combine spiritual formation, rest, nature, and then coaching, right? And transformation and really getting to the core of what it is God wants for you in this season. So
Yeah. I,
just
I
all
love
rooted
that
in
you're
grace.
I love that you're offering us both, Gina, because we need the what can I do now? And so 8 minutes is doable. Who here does not have 8 minutes? And if you tell me
Yes.
you don't, grab out your phone. I guarantee you spent more than 8 minutes on your phone today. You do have time.
Yes.
But what I love is you're doing this like, let's get you out of your element. Let's get you away from everyday duties and distractions and all the roles and responsibilities, because there's something that happens when you get away from all of that and you're able to focus on these things that are truly life-giving, that are really helping you to prioritize what matters and all of that. And, being around others who are seeking that as well is really a way to really like take that experience to the next level. And so I love that you're doing that. I love that you're getting people together. I've seen the pictures. It's a beautiful place, you guys. We will link to the conference website in the show notes so that you can look at it. And this is also my reasoning behind us doing the It's Time conference in Nashville in September, just a couple months after that, because again, like, I mean, how many summits, and things have we showed up to online, which are great and there's a lot of value in there, but your brain is still sitting in front of your screen thinking about everything waiting for you outside that door and all the things you have to do when you're done and and you don't really fully get away and you don't really fully focus. And so I just want to encourage you guys that are listening, like check out Gina's retreat. Maybe that's what you need. Check out the It's Time conference. Maybe that's what you need. Sometimes we need to get out of our everyday element. Will it cost you time and money and a little bit of hassle maybe to figure things out to get yourself away? Yeah, but it's always going to be a good return on time invested and money that you invest in things like that. So we'll be sure to link to both of those in the show notes so you guys can check it out. So thanks, Gina, so much for being with us today. You've inspired me in many ways because I know I can get heads down on some big projects and then sometimes go, oh, wow, look at the time, even as a time
Yep.
coach. So I've needed this reminder today too. And I know a lot of women are going to be blessed. And girls, you all know that this is what we talk about all the time with our friends. I'm just so busy. I don't have time for this. So next time you say that, say, hey, you need to hear this episode. In fact, don't wait till you say that next time or you hear that. Like send this to a business bestie right now who really, like needs to have that rest in her life and who can maybe hold you accountable. And speaking of being accountable, we are going to continue the conversation over inside the Redeem Her Time community where I'm inviting Gina to come in and you guys can come in and share about your struggles to rest and ask questions about what does rest look like in this season and how do I really find things that are life-giving and all of that. So come on and join us over inside the Redeem Her Time community. If you're not a member yet, go to redeemhertime.com/community. And we are a group of called, committed CEOs who are driven, right, by a divine direction to do our business with lots to do, but we are wanting to do it with him and to do it with rest, like Gina's talking about. So I think you're going to love that. So thank you, Gina. I appreciate this. And just for you, as you're stepping into this next season in life and business, we always like to ask the question around here, what is it time for? So, how would you answer that question as you're thinking about your own life and business right now in this season? What is it time for you?
Well, it's time for rejoicing. That's the word the Lord gave me this year, and just finding more joy again, laughing more, and living more lightly, with my family and friends. So, yeah, that's really rooted in legacy, and not wanting my son to remember a mom, right? Who just prioritizes her to-do lists
Yes.
over loving Jesus, and just modeling from that place of peace and not pressure.
Yeah, I love that. And that will be a great return on time invested. So, cheering you on in that way. So, thank you so much, Gina, for being with us today. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We will see you guys over inside the community and keep talking about rest.